Hello everybody, something slightly different today for today's stream. We're going to be building the new PC that I've got. So this is to replace the one that I basically sold on. So what we're trying to go for here is we're just trying to go a bit of a mix of something that's a bit budget and also something we can then progress onto. A lot of these parts here, I think the subtotal came out to approximately £400, £450. I've got a couple of parts though which I'm already sort of using from an old build, so it's probably going to look out probably about 500 quid. So if you end up building a PC, which you should be able to game most things on, reasonable specs for probably about 500 odd quid. That's the plan. As I say, I've kind of gone a little bit over. I'll put in the figures as well as we go along. I've kind of gone over with a little bit of stuff though. For example, here we've got some Corsair Ram, but I've gone for 32 instead of 16. So if you were doing this normally, you could probably quite happily get away with 16. If you want to save money, I'll also say that as we go along. There's a lot of things here that you could buy for cheaper and get just as much out of it. So anyway, as I say, this is a PC which I'm building for myself. This is for a bit of gaming, so obviously you'll see this on the channel. You're going to also have, it's going to become my workstation, so it's also going to be something that's used for web development, programming, obviously my day-to-day job as IT support. And we'll also be using it for doing these designs as well. So at the moment, I've been kind of using it on the Mac, which is great, but I kind of just want to move it all into an all-in-one sense and leave that for the little bit of graphics that I do have to do because it is quite good at that. So with that in mind, what we've got here, so I've gone for the Ryzen 7, this is the 2700, so the 2700. I haven't gone for the X. I did come close at the time of this build, and obviously with me doing it, the Ryzen X, the 2700X was 180 quid, I think, for the X, which is pretty good. But just the normal standard model of the 7 was 140, which was down again from what it was. I mean, they used to be 300 odd quid. I've gone for the AMD. Normally I'm an Intel boy, just put that out there. I have gone for the AMD though, just because it's that little bit cheaper. This thing has 8 cores, which is what I want. I want that because I'll be doing some VMs and building up a few other little machines inside the machine. You'll see that later on. So I wanted something that had more cores. I was looking along the lines of a Xeon processor, but although you could pick them up cheapish, the fact that the base clock was limited to roughly 2.5, now I know it doesn't always matter when it comes to the speed, because obviously I was looking at some of the videos, you can see them, find them online. They can still play games pretty well because of the number of cores. They've just got enough threads to throw through things. Now obviously some games, probably not the ones that we'll be playing, some of the games do limit it and they're only like, okay, we're only going to use 2 cores. So it doesn't matter if you have a 4-core processor or a 12-core processor, it doesn't really matter. So anyway, so I went for 8 because, as I say, we're going to be building up some VMs. So ideally, I mean, best case scenario is I'm going to have one that's, so I'm going to have 4 cores, which will be remain for the Windows base image itself. And then I'm going to have 4 cores for hopefully another box, probably something like a Linux box or something like that. So then we've got a nice balance there. And obviously if we want to, we can always cut it down. We can always run 2 cores on the base machine and have 3 other VMs going at once. So that's my reasoning behind the 7. I went for the 7 just because I went for the 7 over the 5, to be honest, just because there was not a lot of price difference in it at the time. I think the 5X was possibly 20 odd quid cheaper. Now, one of the key differences that I do know, which did nearly get me, was that the 7 series, if you are thinking of doing this, the 7 series does not have built-in graphics. So you will have to have an external graphic card to power it. Now obviously we can go down that route later on in the video, because graphics cards, there's a whole new world there, a bit like there is with processors. I mean, every single part here, as we'll run through them, there's a lot. You could do any number of things here. You could go more expensive, less expensive, and get everything in between. I'm not saying, I mean, we could perhaps later on down the line, we could look to do a really cheap build, which, basically probably everything's second-hand parts, everything's just like basic, bog standard. We get something that could do middle of the road, and we could probably run a fair amount of games on it. So just for comparison, obviously, a Ryzen 7, which was 140 quid that I bought off Amazon, brand new. I could have gone for a Xeon processor, as I said back then, which would have been, I think they were working at about 90 quid, but obviously older spec, older model, lower base clock. Now when you're playing games, obviously you want that higher clock, because it processes everything much quicker in basic terms. Anyway, that's enough for the processor. So obviously, because we've gone for an AMD processor, the Intel thing that's in there at the moment is null void. So for it to sit on, we've gone for the B450. I went for this one because it hasn't got the onboard Wi-Fi, which, to be honest, didn't really need for what I'm doing. Some of you might want it, in which case you obviously might need to go for, I can't remember what the other version is, I think is it I or L? B450IL. That has built-in Wi-Fi. There is also a B450 from MSI, which I was very close to getting. That again had onboard Wi-Fi. There's a lot of other things that you can do with a motherboard, and at the end of the day, kind of all boils down to the same thing. For the AMD processors, you've probably got B450s at the moment, or I think the other one is the X450s now. Probably could be wrong with that. As I say, when I was doing a bit of research on what board I wanted and what I wanted to use, the B450s were coming out pretty strong. I mean, this was £109, so not too expensive. Kind of middle of the road. It's got a lot of stuff built in. It's got the RGB, which I'll go into in more depth because obviously the case had the built-in RGB. Looked pretty cool. Again, just for aesthetics. And the other reason that I went for this one is it's got the new M.2 onside the board. So we'll go into that. All I've got here is the M.2. So I'll just show you as I get it out of the package. This tiny little thing. So this is the M.2. So I've gone for the Samsung 970. This is going to be a hard drive. This is a 500 gig hard drive. You can get a smaller version of it if you want to. I did have in a previous build a 250 or 256 if you want to be technical about what space they've got. It was great, and that build was a couple of years old when I did it, and the boot up speed and everything was fantastic. So I highly recommend at least going for an SSD. For personal preference, I'd always say a Samsung, probably Samsung either. Don't think you need to go for the Plus necessarily. You can save a bit of money. So this was £95, and this is from Amazon, and this is actually from Amazon Warehouse. Recommend it if you are going to go through Amazon. Have a look on the warehouse first. Sometimes they've got the same product for like 20 quid less. Okay, this doesn't come in packaging, but reality is I'm not one that puts all the boxes necessarily out on the show. If you want to put the boxes out on the show, then yeah, go brand new. But if you're just going to put the boxes in the bin or put it in the cupboard, probably say check out Amazon Warehouse. Usually just that slightly bit cheaper. Sometimes they say there's like I can't remember, I think it was this one, they said there was a slight scratch on there somewhere. But majority of the time, if you're reading the description, a lot of the time it says it's fully functional. That's all you need. You just need it fully functional. So that's going to go on. That should hopefully make it lightning quick. And as I as I say, 500 gig, because we're just going to be installing all sorts of programs on this. I went for the 256 last time, wasn't quite, it was good, but I was kind of running out of space towards the end of about probably 2-3 years of use. You know, I was starting to put more programs on, things like that. It was just kind of, it was getting a bit too tight for me. And I like to have the main programs that the PC's running on the SSD, because you want those light and fast. The games, sometimes I put 1 or 2 games onto the SSD just to make them quicker. You can buy 1 terabyte versions of these, 2 terabyte versions of these, but you're going to, again, be talking some serious wedge. For me, I've got a 2 terabyte classic, you know, disk hard drive in there, which is more than adequate for what I need to do in load times and things like that. I mean, yes, it could be quicker, but for what I need it for, it's going to be fine. That's the hard drive. As I say, we went for the Vengeance Pro Ram. Again, you could get this slightly cheaper. These are currently 90 quid, and that's for 2 sticks for 16 gig, which is pretty good. You could probably go slightly cheaper if you didn't go for the RGB. This is just the 3200 megahertz one. Should be fine. I did do a bit of reading up, and it says if you're using a B450 board, these are probably the better ones. So I was like, okay, so they're on offer. They're cheap. They came out quite cheap. Now, as I say, it was actually partially through my own. I'll admit this, partially through my own foolery that I bought 2. I opened the box from Amazon and was like, oh sweet, they've sent 2. That, you know, I only ordered 1, they sent 2. I thought this is great. And then I checked the order, and then I realised, actually, I did actually spend more. But for the order itself, I mean, so we're talking for the hard drive, the processor, the motherboard, and the 2 sets of RAM. I think we looked at just under 400 quid, which I was pretty pleased about. So that's just under 400 quid. As I said, when I read about the Ryzen 7 not having onboard graphics, I had to get another graphics card. Because the one in there, I don't have one in there at the moment. That went with the old one. So what I've gone for is, to be honest, it's just a nice cheap one off eBay for now. We went for the Sapphire RX 550. It's quite a nice little card actually. Again, it's not boxed; it's just come out. This is manufacturer refurbed. If I can actually say it right. And this came out for 45 quid. So I was kind of like, I was stuck for time. Money's not quite there this month, as you can tell, because of this bit. Quite a nice little graphics card. It has the DVI, the DisplayPort, and the HDMI and DisplayPort. These 2 are the ones that I was looking for most. So again, it's kind of like pretty good board. A lot of people saying you can actually run quite a lot of stuff off it. It's got 4 gig of the memory, the GDDR5 or whatever it is memory. I always forget what it's actually called. Here it is, GDDR5. So we should be able to run quite a few things off this. I did read a couple of reviews. People were saying, and actually for the size of it and for the price of it, I mean 45 quid, it's pretty good. The other reason I went for this one is because at the moment the power supply unit that I've got in there is from an old Dell Inspiron machine. It's only about 350 watts, I think it is. We'll check it when we get it out. And it doesn't have the additional power to go into a graphics card. So I was originally looking to get something that was along the lines of a 660 or something similar. I was only going cheap now because, as I say, we were kind of just trying to do this bit on a budget to get the main thing up and running, and then we'll add into it. So, for example, you know, maybe next month, maybe the month after, depending on how we go, probably going to look at getting something, maybe like a 10 something or other. Toyed with the idea of, because I used to have a 970, GTX 970, it's a good card, ran a lot of things on really high spec, which is exactly what I wanted. Was toying with the idea of perhaps sort of like SLIing those, because you can pick those up quite cheap. The 970s are probably about 100 odd quid, which is pretty good. But now, as I say, because of the budget, we're just kind of going for the slightly basic graphics card. Going on from there, obviously the upgrades that we're probably looking to do somewhat in the future. Probably like to do the all-in-one cooler. I had one of those on the old machine that I had. And what was the other one? Power supply. And get a better power supply. So if you were trying to actually do the build from scratch, probably say, what was these parts? You're probably looking at, what was this, 450 for this on the desk. That's including the graphics card, I think. I'm doing my maths correctly, yeah. So it's 450 including the graphics card. So if you then had to chuck on top of that a power supply, you could probably get one. I mean, just a nice, normal, cheap, like 350, whatever. And you could probably pick that up quite nice and cheap. It'd probably be at sub 500 quid, and that would be the tower. That's kind of the tower built. You'd just be running off the 500 hard drive. As with everything that's PC build wise, you can go down the rabbit hole very quickly. So, for example, if we wanted to throw a water cooling loop into this, just the all-in-one normal ones, you could be looking at sort of like 90 odd quid. As I say, if you wanted more SSDs for the data and stuff like that, I mean, you can start wrapping them up. You could probably save some money, as I say, if you went for the classic 2.5 size SSD instead. So yeah, and then obviously the case on top of it. Now you pick up a normal case, you build it inside any case if you wanted to. You can build it inside anything, as long as obviously this is a full size board. So make sure you are getting a full size tower. Otherwise, you'll have to look at the MIDI boards. So yeah, I reckon probably 500 quid. You probably do a whole lot for 500 quid. You might have to cut a couple of corners. You might have to go for a Ryzen 5. As I say, probably only one stick of RAM. One set of 16, sorry. And that will pretty much do it. So going on to the case, what I've got here is I've got the Razer Lian-Li. I admit a bit of a Razer fanboy, as you probably see from the rest of this as we go through the video. I like it because although it's a bigger tower, I'm quite happy with that. I've got the desk space, it's not a problem. I like it because it's got the two sides of glass, tempered glass on the front and tempered glass on the front, and on the side. Obviously, because of the way I've got it, it's kind of like as you sit here, you can see everything's going on in it. Hence why we've gone for RGB RAM. We've gone for a board that's got RGB connectors on it, and we've gone for the AMD, which actually comes with an RGB cooler on it as well. So we're going to throw RGB at this everywhere, because why not? Because that's what we do. So that's the landing case. Apart from that, obviously the other things we've got here, I've got my classic Razer Black Widow tucked away here in the corner. This is actually from way back into 2014 and it's still doing me strong. Love that keyboard. Again, Razer Taipan mouse, which I already have. I do actually have now the Blisk, the Razer Blisk. I actually do really like this mouse. I might swap it, to be honest, but I kind of use this one at work more often than not. This little bit is really cool because of the way it sits on your thumb. If I just do it properly, it kind of just gives you that bit there. And you've also got a nice little clicky, an additional clicker there. So I might plug those in. The only downside with the classic stuff that I've got is it's just green. So we're not quite hitting the RGB aspect of it yet, anyway. But as I say, we could put in the Blisk, and I've also got over here the Synosa. Again, this is another RGB keyboard. It's really quite good, not too expensive for what they are. Really well built. Recommend it. Downsides compared to the Black Widow. This one I got because it's quiet, as you can hear, as opposed to my classic. That one's good at home. This one, when you're in an office space, this is much better in office space. People don't get annoyed at you quite so quickly as they do with the mechanical. The only other downside of this is that it doesn't have any USB inputs on either side. Whereas if you were to get like the Black Widow, or if you're looking at something like the Huntsman, you've got the audio on the side. You've probably seen me plug them in. You've got the audio on the side and you've got USB on the side. Quite useful sometimes. To be honest, I haven't really ever used it that much because obviously where the environment it's in, it's not really used. I did have an old Black Widow, which was the yellow keys, which are the quiet keys, I think, like this. And I did have that at work, and the USB and the headphone jack came in nowhere to use because obviously you've only got one cable going to the computer, and everything else was coming out of the keyboard, so it was much nicer for that. So we might plug that in because this and the disc here, I got these around Christmas time. There was a deal on Razer, and it was like half price. So the whole lot together there was, I think we're looking about 80 odd quid. So it did really well for these two. Both of them are full Razer Synos or whatever they call it. I can't remember now. So the whole RGB and everything can be tied in together. So we might just plug them in just to see how they look. But as I say, my probably daily usage tends to be the Black Widow and the Taipan, and I'm just so used to those now. It's like second nature. Cool. So I think that's all the parts we've got. As I say, let me just move that out really quickly. And I'll just show the case. As I say, we've got the Lian-Li case. So as you can see, there's a couple of parts in here already. This was just basically me just testing it out. It looks really cool with the lights on. You'll see it later on. As I say, the parts that are in here, we're talking like a really, really old i5, a really old SSD that I just had lying around, which doesn't really work very well because, as I found out the other day when I started installing something, it blue screen on me. And whenever I've tried to install anything since, it blue screen, so the hard drive is knackered. That, and we're just running, I think it was one stick of 8GB RAM. Not very good. So, as I say, brand new build. Let's get started. So, first off, let's put, just because I don't want to scratch the desk, let's put that down. There. And we'll use that little bit of wrap there. Just going off a Lian-Li case, this is a fantastic case. It's a bit more expensive. I got on a deal through, I think it was Currys UK. I got on a deal around Christmas time. Again, bought a lot of stuff for Christmas time that I didn't really need or use. But really good case. Everything like strips off it so easily. So all you've got, instead of it coming off from the side first, you've got the top, which I've already undone. And you can see that it actually comes with a magnetic filter, which is really useful. So we'll keep that there. That's one side. And then for the rest of it, the glass bits on the side, I've actually still got the protective layer on them, because obviously I'm finished building this properly. They just lift up and peel away, as you can see. And then we've also got the one on the front, which is exactly the same, except it has, I don't know how well you can see it, has the little Razer logo on it. That lights up. The way they've done it is actually really clever. So kind of like the RGB strips are basically under the bottom here, and then around the front, so I'll show you along there down the front. So when the RGB strip lights up here, it actually goes all the way through the glass and lights up this side as well. We're really clever. Right, let's have a look, see what parts I've left in here from before. Screwdriver kit. Obviously, those following along in the chat, got any questions? I have actually been ignoring the chat for a second, so let's just see what's going down. Oh, we've got Woken. Oh, hi Woken, how are we doing? Yes, we are putting this together. We are putting the whole thing back together. Obviously, if you've got questions in the in the chat there. This will probably also be going up onto YouTube. Well, hopefully going up onto YouTube. So if you've got any further questions, obviously ask them in the comments, and I'll get back around to them and give you a bit more advice. Probably if you if you need a bit more thoughts on stuff. Actually, just to sort of run through this. So what I've got at the moment, this is probably where, if I can somehow set this up slightly better, we use this other camera. So bear with. There we go. Right, if we... I'm just going to cheat a little bit and put some blue tack on the bottom of this, because we don't want it moving really, not that much anyway. Right, cool. So, spin this round so you can actually sort of kind of see what's roughly going on here. As we see, we've got some parts in here already, as I said. So it's kind of close actually, that. Move that back a little bit. / streaming problems. Yeah, so that's a bit better. You can kind of see a bit more what's going on. So as I say, we've got here the old SSD. This came out of an old machine. It's kind of a bit pointless. If you probably pick up one of these brand new, I'll just put it there. It's Kingston 120 gig SSD. Pretty quick. You know, I mean, for the job that it does, it's pretty good. If you've got something that's like a laptop or something, then it'll work pretty well. Just if you wanted to like make something super, these are probably super cheap now as well. I mean, this is donkey's years old, and it served me well for the time. But as I say, when I was trying to do this one, it just blue screens and just dies. So I think that's pretty fine with the bin for that one, which is a shame. The other bit at the bottom here, oops, as he breaks the whole thing. The other bit we've got at the bottom here is a massive Seagate 2 terabyte drive. Again, came from an old machine. Probably picked these up quite cheap now as well. I don't quite know how much they'd be, but they've been highly useful. I still haven't even filled this thing yet, but I have a feeling when we start getting through a few VMs like I plan to, probably might need a second one. I think I've got a second one somewhere as well, which I had from somewhere. So again, the 2 terabyte drive, we've got that. You have to excuse the rest of the mess as I'm trying to like place things out and about. As for the rest here, what we've got in here, we've got a couple of fans that I had from the old build left over. These are just, I think these are 120mm fans, just white at the moment. Plan to upgrade them to the RGB ones at some point. I've got one there, which you can just about see. And I've also got one on the top here, which I'll show you later on. I'm probably going to leave those where they are for now. And then the old girl here, we've got one little stick of RAM. Oh, crumbs, it was only 4 gig of RAM. There we go. Really, really old piece of RAM. 4 gig of RAM. I don't even know where that came from. And then we've got the processor, which is obviously an old i5. The rest of it, the board itself is pretty solid actually. It's pretty good. Came out of, as I say, came out of an old Dell machine I had from donkeys ago, desktop PC. So even if you call one of those lying around, I mean, you build anything out of these things. Again, it's just kind of got to its time now, and as we want the AMD processor, got to change the whole lot up. So what we're going to do is we are just going to strip this off because we don't really need it anymore. I'm just going to tuck that away. I have to say the other great thing about this board, not this board, sorry, this case. If you are getting this case, it's absolutely welded in there. Technical difficulties, boys. As I say, the other great thing about this case is, get it out, is the cable tidy that they've got behind here. I'll show you it. It is a big case, I won't lie about that. It does really fill the desk up, but if it's the main centerpiece like it is for me, that was a mission. If it's your main centerpiece, like it is for me, as you'll see later on. It's kind of, I don't mind, basically. If you're obviously tight on space, you're kind of working off a smaller desk, you might want to look at something else. Razer do have their own other case, which is the NZXT. It's a pretty good case. I like it. That was the one I had before. In fact, Matt, who is in the chat now, has actually got that case. That's really cool. It's got lights, RGB, the whole lot as well. It's got a slightly smaller glass size, probably only about, I can't really see, probably about this sort of size. And that's again, that's great. Bit like the Black Widow that I've got though, it's just green. But then again, that's pretty cool itself. And as you can tell by my channel, a lot of the stuff is green. Right, okay, so let's get rid of the rest of these parts. So we'll take that out. Just leave that around that way. I'm going to take the back panel off, just quickly. If it will come off. There it is. Yeah, that's fine. Get rid of that bit, and get rid of that bit. I'll run through some of the other cables that we've got on the bottom here in a second anyway. So that's all of that out of the way. Spin it back round. Put me little bits of padding down. Probably bad mistake to take one back. Take those out, we don't need those just yet. Anybody that's following along will probably realise that I will actually talk to myself quite a fair bit, but hey. I'm the only crazy one in here. Oh, magic! Look at that, look. Magic. It's almost as if this is a professional stream. Which it is, and you should highly subscribe. So hit that like and subscribe button, and that follow button. Right. So what we're going to do is just going to remove the old motherboard and safely dispose of it, children. That's the thing you need to remember. So I'm just going to take this bit out. I'm hoping that in the new motherboard box we get some new screws, because these things are awful. That's it. So we free it up. That's pretty good. Right, okay. Nah, I'll leave it. So anyway, out comes the old board. As I say, pretty good board, really, to be honest. I'm slightly let down by the fact that it's only got, what was that? I don't know, wasn't the, yeah, it was only 6 USBs. It did have an optical, and it did have the HDMI, which did come in useful. Obviously not having a graphics card already. So that can go off to one side for now. Like that. So as you can see, this is the case itself. Just pop that out as well. Get rid of that, because that's all. As you can see, like the front of this bit, as they're quite rightly designed, is all it's all very clean. There's not a lot going on in front of it, because obviously everything that's in here is visible. So obviously you want to keep it that way. So we'll be putting the new motherboard in the front. As I say, somewhat down the line, probably look at getting at least three RGB fans, and what we'll do is we'll put them down the side here. You've got some little cable tidy aspects here down the side, as you can see with this one that's pushed through, and you've also got a couple at the bottom as well. Just lifting it up ever so slightly. At the bottom here as well, you can see in through that screen. We've got a couple of SSD holders as well. So if you were doing an SSD build like that, it's quite nice sometimes if you have them in the bottom. It's kind of a coolish way of having them on display. Also being at the bottom, the idea being, and we'll go through the cooling in a second, the idea being that, you know, if you can draw in air past them, and then obviously all the heat will rise, come out the top, and it's going to keep things nice and cool for you. Just to flick it over and show the back for a second. So as you see from the back, if I put it at the right angle, this is a really amazing case. You've actually got space for 2 power supplies if you so wanted to. I don't know why you want to do that, but if that's your thing, that's your thing. You fit it either at the top or at the bottom. Now there is also over here somewhere. Just place it down. The Lian-Li case does also come with a hard drive caddy like this. This originally slotted up here. Just push it back again. It originally slotted up here, and I think when it actually does come round to it, and it comes around to me doing this build with the new power supply, which we'll probably do another stream for when I get that bit changed. I'm going to put the hard drive caddy back up here, and we'll move the power supply unit down there. The reason the power supply is there now is because of this short thing. Now, this is used at the top of the motherboard to make sure it basically has enough power. So, because obviously this is, I don't know how short that is. I mean, I don't know. That's Dell for you. That is, keeping things as long as they need to be. I've had to mount the power supply at the top. So that's just for now. As I say, this is just a power supply that came out of an old Dell machine. It's hopefully going to do us the job that we need it to do, but who knows. Right, so as you see, anyway, at the back of this is all lovely and tidy. You've got this little bit here, which is screwed in 2 places. Oh, shoot. So just to give you a bit more review of it. This again, actually, I'm tempted to, if I can set this up properly, set it up with this. This is basically like a little back panel. It can be used for either the cables hiding, because obviously, as you can see, there's a lot of room here. We just shove any cables that we don't want on display, which is usually quite useful because a lot of the power supplies, they come and they'll have a cable that basically reaches from there to over here somewhere, just in case you ever happen to, I don't know, need a 6-foot piece of cable or something. I don't know. But I might put this in. In fact, it was in, and I'll use it properly. And I'll put the. I think I'll put. Basically, what it is to hold the hard drive. So, guessing. What you'll notice is that these little rubber gauntlets here will line up on the back of there. Like that. And then what we'll do is we'll mount it there. Then what that means is that it's not on show in the bottom. Now, obviously, if we had something that was maybe, say, like the Samsung SSD that I was on about earlier on, you might go, you know what, we want that on there. We want that to be on display because it looks good. It looks pretty. It does look pretty, which I would agree with. So we'll probably put that in. I'm going to leave this out for now, just while we sort the rest out. Put that to one side. That's it. Right. Okay. Flick it back over. Now then, start from the simple part first. He says, simple part. I've actually got, when you buy this case, sometimes it comes with an extender for this. And it's supposed to light up, so I might actually go and grab that in a second as well, and we can do the whole thing at once. Right, first things first, the motherboard. So, better not lose that screw. He's got a screw loose. Right, so just as a little bit of an unboxing of this, I'll put it there. Should be good enough to see. So we've gone for the B450. Does say here, look, Ryzen 3000 ready. We've only got 2000, so we don't really need to worry about that all too much. We are ready as well. And of course, the other bit actually we do need to just look at is the Aurora sync, which is obviously going to enable our RGBness, our eliteness, as you will. Important thing here, actually, guys, while we're just on this, the boring man. Always make sure you just, you de-static yourself when you can. If I was doing this properly, which apparently I'm not, you should be having like an anti-static wristband on and all sorts of governors like that and anti-static for when in a home environment. It's not going to happen. All I do, every now and again, tap a radiator, tap something metal, tap something that's earthed, basically, just to get rid of any static off yourself. Obviously, these come in an anti-static bag, so for the handling part now, we don't need to worry about too much. So we can get rid of that out of the way. And let's see what they've given us. So we've got a little pin extender, okay. Booklet, a CD, because everybody needs those these days. And a Republic of Gamers sticker. Oh, we've got some new SATA cables, which we'll use those because they're black. And SATA cables, but those ones are, I mean, you see through the image there, those ones are 90 degrees, so those come in quite useful. Quite sure. Cable tidies, we need those. Another one. We've got some stickers. Well, thank you for making this choice. And there's a little bit for the top. Put that on. Okay, so no screws, but that's not a problem because there's some that came with a Lian-Li, so we're alright. I think what I did was I never used those ones because obviously I was looking to obviously do this build. So when I put the Intel board in, I never really bothered. So let's crack these open and try not to spill them all over the floor, which is quite likely to happen at the moment. Right, safe. That bit can go in a bit later. Right, cool. Oh, lovely boys, it's been a morning since I've gone through all of these steps properly. So let's just have a little look. Okay, that's fine. What I'm just checking, just while we go through this, is I want to make sure. I need like some sharp through that. What could I just open it? It was never going to peel straight, was it? It's always the way. Well, it's officially open now. Just lost 40 quid. AMD install instructions. Kids, if you're not aware, always read the instructions. Or glance over them, just to make sure you still know what you're doing, like I do, every now and again. Which currently comes in every language, but in English, let me just make sure. So some boards, they always say, like, some motherboards, they always say, put the processor on, then sync it in, because you have to sort of like put the cooler on over the top of the two. So I just want to make sure that we're doing this the right way around. There we go. so we're putting the pins in, and then we're just sliding it straight on. I don't think, let me just check the fan type on there. Ooh, shiny. I think this is the chunky fan. And we've got thermal paste on already. Excellent. Make sure we don't stick that to ourselves. The last thing you want to be doing is touching that, because we ain't gonna get much else. And that's your RGB4 extender, which I don't think we really need. In case I think that cable there is just in case you obviously have an RGB controller on board and a fan controller, which we don't. Well, we do, but everything's going to go through the motherboard anyway. Losing track of the parts here. Those two go in there. So let's get the motherboard out. Again, make sure you've got clean hands, anti-static where you need to, and basically try to avoid it touching any of the pins. It's never that easy. This one's on. Right, so let's make sure that we can line this up with some of the one we need. God, look at that, we've got loads of it. Look, it was made to go in this gap. And it's already got the built-in cover, so we don't even need to worry about placing that in like we did with the other one. Okay. Just check this cooler because I'm not convinced. Oh, that's gonna. Oh no, actually, because it is kind of. I suppose it is right. So basically, actually, just to show you, so this is the cooler that's going to go on top. I'm just trying to work out, obviously, the way that these pins are going to align. Now, with what's on the board already, it looks like we're going to actually be replacing these two bits of plastic, which you can see here, because they're basically going to be in the way. But obviously what we don't want to do is drop it off the back of the board. So let's just check. Tactical. See what this one recommends. So flick it up, put the processor in place, which is what we've done. So yeah, okay, so we'll put the processor in place, lock it back down with the pin that we see there, as I'd expect it. We're being careful not to touch these pins, otherwise we'll be in some serious trouble. You'll also notice that one of those sides is cut away slightly for which side the pin is going to go into. According to this, the cutaway side should be on the opposite corner, so it should be up that side there. And then for the type 2, we're going to take the screws off, and then we're going to screw another one on top. Okay. This is always the bit that, I'll be honest with you, I always like crap myself over because this is kind of the main part of it. We're basically doing open heart surgery here. So that's it, because that seals across the pins. So we lift the water one up. This is the bit that takes a lot of delicate care. So as you can see on the processor, we bring it up on the right angle of the light. Somewhere in there, let me see which corner it is. This corner, there is a slight, well, there's like a little arrow basically. And basically what that was saying, what I was just checking, is that it shows you which way around obviously the pin alignment is, because some boards have different pins. Some of them face that way, some of them face that way, some of them face that way, it's whatever. So what the instructions was just saying just then is that we're going to put it down this way around basically, so that this little, what do you call it, the little arrow is in the top corner out of the way, so that we know that that's the way around. I'm going to double, triple check that, because if we put it the wrong way around, we aren't going to get anything out of this machine at all, except for a slightly expensive build, because we have to redo it. So yeah, so this is in that corner. There is a technical name for it, I can't remember what the technical name is. And that one should go in that top corner. So basically, as we've got that there, so that's fine. And again, this is the bit to be very, very careful with, because if you look on the underside, you've got all the pins. Now, those are the bits that you do not want to touch, regardless of static or anything like that. So we're going to have to try and ease this out of here, and we're going to get it to sit down on top of that without any mess ups. Always being certain, and you can see there, all the pins on the bottom. That is going to go on top of there. I'm going to slide it in. You have to excuse my head for a second. The last thing I want to do is get this wrong. And you'll feel it sort of like, as if, I don't know whether you heard that then, it will just like sit in place. And again, don't touch the top either. Basically, the only part of the processor you can touch is the side. And if you were to just try and wiggle it, you've got a little bit of movement in there, but it's not as if you can lift it out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then push the bar back down and clip it back into place. You'll notice on this side, just anybody else that's doing this alongside, there is actually like a little clip there, and it will clip underneath. And if you try and lift it, don't move the board. Whoops. And if you try and, like, obviously, now, if you try to move that, it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah, it won't move. It's probably like millimetres of play in it, but that's about as much as you've got. Okay, cool. So now that's in place, what we're going to do is we have got to take these two bits off so that we can then mount the fan on top of it. Now, this is a bit that I'm slightly concerned about, and I'm hoping that that metal plate on the other side of this is actually at least somewhat screwed on. The reality is, I'm doing this the dumb way around, and I should have done this before putting the processor in place. So if you are having to do a build and you're kind of watching this one to follow along, make sure you take the processor out first. Right, there's one removed. Just going along with the chat in the mixer at the moment. Will this be powerful enough to play MTG? Probably yes. We should be able to play Battlefield and things like that on this easy. He says. Find out soon enough. We'll run some specs. We'll just do that as a backup video. I knew it. See, I knew it was going to do that. What's basically just happened is that there is a plate on the other side of here. I don't know if you saw it earlier on. That plate has decided that it no longer wants to remain in the space and has decided to drop down slightly. Shouldn't, hopefully, cause us an issue, because as long as we've got those two there which are already up, what we want to do is make sure that the screws there are basically going to pick it up, which they should do. I don't see any reason why not. Obviously, if most of the processors these days, when you buy them brand new, they come with this grey on it, which is the thermal paste. If that wasn't on there, you'd have to have like a little tube of it. And what we'd be doing is we'd place, there's like 101 different ways you can do this. We'd place some thermal paste on there. Some people do a cross method, some people do dots, some people do a blob. I think the cross method is probably the best. Oh, there's like one which is like a cross and then some dots. They're kind of the best. Basically, what you want to do is you want to get like a nice even coverage like that. That's what you want on the processor to keep it nice and cool. The problem is, once obviously you put it on, if you are doing like a little blob or something on there, you never know if that's what you've achieved, or if you've actually achieved something that's just like 6 inches deep this side and I don't know how deep the other side. Anyway, I digress. So, which way around should we put this? So we're going to have the RGB sticks in here. This is RGB in itself. Where's the header for it? The CPU fan header is up here. The RGB next to it. So I think the cleanest way of doing it would be to mount it that way, so that the AMD is on that side. It's going to annoy me slightly less. I'd obviously quite like it if it would actually sit that way around, so that the AMD was on top, because OCD reasons, but never. Right, anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the 4 screws onto there, hope to the sweet Lord above that they catch. And again, this is one where you've got to be slightly careful how you're doing it, because you don't want to. So how that is now, that is resting on top. Okay? Now we don't want to move it around too much necessarily, because we're going to mess up that bit of thermal paste which was on there already. Now with this one, I'm just going to get down slightly. It comes with some screws which you've got. Mess this up slightly. Board is just right. I'm happy with where that is. Let's just see if, to be fair, actually thinking about it now, if I've actually thought about it in the process, what I would have done is like put this down on the desk. And done it on top of the desk. That was a much more sensible way of doing it, wouldn't it? probably see. Is that there? And what we want is that under there. Bingo. Right. And this is ever so slightly off camera for you guys. Just need to make sure we get this in. Ever so slight irony of this is that I'm kind of taking, well, you need to take a lot of care with this really, but as I said earlier on in the video, a solid intention of changing this out for an all-in-one water-cooled loop anyway, so don't mind that sound, that is just the spring. Now with these, what I would recommend doing, you can actually just see it just on the side there, is if you go opposite corners, so in like a square, not a square, sorry, in a cross. So you go one there, one there, one there, one there. Just kind of helps tighten the whole thing down ever so slightly. So that one back. Do that one on that side. Like that. And then as I say, make sure, really make sure these are nice and tight, because you want that thermal paste to be nicely applied to the processor, and you want it so that it sits really nice and flush on there, which I think we've kind of managed quite nicely there. Should almost near enough be able to sort of lift it up off it. Which you can. Right, okay, now so processor should go on first, as we've just determined. Tell me I haven't done this for a while. Now we can lift the board into place. So again, this is going to be a lot heavier this time around. Somehow I'll grab onto that. Now obviously this case was designed to fit the full size motherboards in, so no real issue lining anything up there. What we're going to do is we're going to get some of these little tiny black screws like this, and I'm going to screw it into the case. A lot tighter than that. Just because I've used them all one this way. There's like two different sets of screws, and they're like near enough identical ones. They're also slightly smaller, so let's try that one. Yeah, that's the one. Just show that how well you'll see it. There's like ever so such minimal difference between those two. The one that you want is that one. So it's the ever so slightly smaller. Because this is going to be in here for a long time. You'll notice in the original one there was only like 3 screws holding it in because oh my god, where's that gone? It's like dropping a 10mm spanner down a car engine bay, that is. Because this is obviously going to be in here for time now, this is going to be my build for quite a while, until maybe such time as we need something a bit bigger. I'm just going to put all of these screws in because we want to make sure it is in there nice and securely. And it will also make it easier for us when we come to fit other parts later on down the line, because we know these ones down this side are an absolute. Could you not? There you go. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves during this one. Kind of one of the boring parts. Oh, it's a good job I hit the fan. I guess you could say something hit the fan. One, two, three. I've got that little one in the top corner that I need to try and get back out again. Oh, here we go. I should say, this is one of the slight downsides of like dark board. It's a bit of an awkward position at home on the bottom. Right, there you go, that's that one there. We've got that one down there. Now then, find out where that other little one went. Oh, there it is. Excuse my head for a second there. I know that's exactly what you want to see on the chat. On the chat, sorry, on the stream. Back of my head. Boom! Right. As with everything else, let's just make sure that it's all nice and tight. Tight. Right. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Sweet. Cool. Right. Okay. So everything's in there nice and tight. Actually, tell you what we'll do, just to make sure, just because I'm paranoid like that, just in case something has happened, I'm just going to tighten the ones on the CPU fan. Last thing you want, boys and girls, is this thing overheating. Might not necessarily show anything in the short term, but in the long term it's going to cause you some issues, and it'll be an expensive one to fix as well. Cool, right, so that's the board in place. I need to deal with those little silly bits in a second. We need to obviously plug in the cooler itself onto the board. I have to say with this one, I'm not entirely sure. So on the board, you won't be able to see it on the chat, but on the board, in here it will say like CPU fan, or like that one there says a pump fan. So for example, if we were installing an all-in-one cooler, what we'd probably end up doing is there'll be 2 cables come out of it basically. One, which I think is going to go to the one over here, which is the one we want, and then there's also one which powers the fan itself, powers the pump itself, because obviously on top of the CPU there's a pump that just blasts the water over top of it and cools it down. But I think the one we want is actually up here. The one there that says CPU fan, and then the one right next to it which actually says RGB header. No, it's going to be the CPU fan for sure. Oh, do you know what that was? I know I said that this is quite a short cable, but I won't be enough. It's too long. Don't you know I'm trying to make like a really clean build here? Now with these, there's like little pins on them, and there is literally only one way they can go. It won't go any other way around, so don't worry about have I got it in the right way around or not. It's probably as clean as we're going to get there. Doesn't look the greatest, does it? But if we twist it, hey, there we go, that'll do. You wouldn't really see that much. Sweet, and your eyes can be distracted anyway by the RGB Ram. Cool. A little Ryzen 7 sticker in there if we so want to use that. We'll keep those board pins to one side in the box, just in case we need those at a later date. Right, up next, let us smash it in. We're going to put in the SSD. So as I said, this one's slightly different. You could always put the other ones on the bottom here, and then you basically run one of these power cables to them, and a SATA cable, which I had somewhere. In fact, actually, you know, for example, one of the new SATA cables. Did I have one? There it is. Run one like that, basically. That's kind of what it looks like. You could run that. Obviously, you could run that behind the board. Basically, it's going to come from here. It's just going to go down there. So we just sort of tuck it in there and back out again. Anyway, same principle applies again. Obviously, we don't want to be handling this any more than we actually have to. So where possible, always sort of like handle it from the side. This is going to fit onto my motherboard just underneath the fan. I'll move it back slightly, you should be able to see slightly better. It's just going to fit just onto here. Some of the boards that you get, they actually come with a heat sink for it. But we didn't quite get as lucky with this. So, again, there's only really, if you look at the pins on that, the pins on the board, there's only really one way you can go in. You can't really get it that far wrong. So you kind of go in at a 45-degree angle first, and then slide them in. And again, I'm not sure quite how well you can see that. At the moment, it's kind of up, but I don't know what that is, 10, 20 degrees. And what we're then going to do is we're then going to screw it down so it sits flat on the board, and that's just going to seal those pins in where we need them. Which is where, now I think about it, these little bad boys come into play. Where's the other one? So remember I said there's two like little screws come with it. That's what those are going to be for. So we want one that is just a slightly higher one. So we're going to go for the slightly higher one. So it's these little screws. Oh, good crumbs. My strength is gone today. Going off on a slight tangent while I struggle to open this. Magic comes to the mobile, then that's deemed sorted for pretty much any single time we need to anyway. Right, I'm going to take this out just for a second and put it back in its box. And I'm going to screw that into the board. Obviously, this is going to be a case of now you can buy different sizes. So here on the board you'll see there's actually some some slots in different places, depending on the size of the SSD. So check that; it will actually say it on it. I can't remember where. I haven't got paperwork down because obviously it came from the warehouse one, but it will tell you the length as well. So you can just make sure that you get the right size one, because some motherboards don't actually fit the full size ones like these Samsungs. So just a little thing to be wary of there. I need a slightly smaller screwdriver for it. Crumbs, even that's kind of a bit too big. Oh well. There you go, there's a small one there. General faffery. Oh, come on. Again, same as the other ones. Just make sure that's nice and tight. That's looking pretty good. We probably could have got away with a slightly smaller one actually. Could have got away with the slightly lower in height, but that should be fine on there like that. That's good enough. Those two, oh, they came from the other side, didn't they? Cool, right, okay, so we've got the CPU on, we've got the SSD on. Let's install. Next easiest one is going to be, in fact actually the next easiest one is going to be the graphics card, because that is literally right there in front of us. You've got a couple of slots here for graphics cards down the side. You've got a couple here as well if you've got things like, for example, the Elgato, if you're streaming through an Elgato or something like that. They tend to go on these smaller ones. If you've got Wi-Fi cards, they tend to go on the smaller ones as well. So to install the graphics card, how many slots do we need? Would you need one? So to install the graphics card, yeah. So have a look, see which slot you're going to put it in. So for example, ours is obviously looking at the pins on the card itself. We're going to need one of the longer ones. We're going to then look at where the pins are and then take out whichever bar. I'll just show you there. Take out whichever bar we need. So we just need that in. And with a lot of these days, these are all the same on all computers really these days. You just pull that out, move it to one side, because realistically, just keep it by just in case you ever do second-hand sell the case or whatever, and you need to change it, or you're moving stuff around. So, say for example, you know, in maybe a couple of months' time, we might be putting a new graphics card in. We might actually go, well, okay, well, we actually need two of them now. So, at least having a couple of spares is always good. And with the graphics card, it literally goes straight on. Straight in. And then what we're going to do is with that screw that we just had a second ago, we're just going to screw it in place, just so that it's not going to move. And that holds it in. That's it. Excellent. And as you can see, like, there isn't really that much wobble. You can't really lift it or do anything else with it. So that's in. It's nice and tight. Cool, so that's that one. The motherboard on. The next interesting bit that we've got, which I always end up failing ever so slightly on, is all the case cables. A lot of these, I mean, like for example this one here, which is just the USB I've got in my hand, it kind of just runs the USB ports on the front. And then you have to check along the bottom here with which one's going to which one. There's an RGB head there as well. I'll just check what we've got. Hang fire, boys. Hang fire. I'm just going to do this sideways. So I want to see what bits we've got coming in from the side. Right. So we've got all the power cables, which we'll sort out slightly later. We've got that one, which is, I forget what it's called now. That one is going to go onto the side there. Power, obviously we need that one. The HD audio now. What is HD audio? I didn't realise actually. Look, there's another. You can actually get two M2s on this board. Crumbs, boys. Which obviously explains what the other one was for. And that actually does sit ever so slightly higher. You can actually get a longer M2 on there. That's intriguing. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to push that one through there, because that's where that one has to come from. So this is basically a couple of bits from the front panel in sort of one easy RGB type level. So this one is it's the only place it can go. So that's going to go straight onto the board there. And there is actually a pin on that, so there's only one way that can go. Our USB one. Now, I'm quite tempted, because obviously the length of this cable, I can't really push that back in anymore, so the length of this cable, I'm quite tempted just to run that back under there. I'm going to come out there and I'm going to go into that one. I think it's really going to make much difference in terms of which one we use. And then the only other bit is this one, which is the power. Now, I guarantee you, crumbs, that is small. Right, I don't even know why. Why am I bothering that? It's beyond here. There it is. Right. You're not going to tell me actually which connectors is which. Really? Oh, boys and girls, this is normally the one where you would just jump online and have a look. Tell you what. I think that is generally too small to even read. Yeah, that was absolutely useless. Haha. Right. Right, so the power switch on this one is the second set there before the end. And this is where you have to get like positive and negative. It's the right way round. Which, you know what, YOLO, go that way round first. I guarantee you 50-50% it's going to be the wrong way around. But whatevs. Whatevs. Sweet, okay, so that's that in. Just for now, Actually, no, you know what? I'll do it. Give it a go. Stand by, callers. For 2 seconds. So, as I said earlier on, Lian-Li actually came with this, which is a RGB power connector extender. So, let's give it a whirl, shall we? Or do you actually have to mess around with it? I think you might actually have to mess around with it. We're always pushing on the time here, boys, to be fair. Oh, that's the connector again. Basically, what this does, it should just clip on over as let's give it a go. Let's go for it. Learn something new. So that's going to go on to an RGB. I think it's only one set colour, so I don't think we need to worry too much. And this connector is that. It's clean. So I think that goes on over the top. Of that. I mean, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Shh, I was meant to do that sound. And then that's it, those are going to pull in those angles there. So, I don't know if you can see this, so it's just on top of here, on top of this cable, there's actually little slots in the plastic. Is where we're going to sort of like, we're just basically going to bend it like that. So we can actually move that forward and backwards as much as we wanted. Actually, we've got quite a, it's not quite the distance here, so just smash through that. 2, 3, 4. And, oh, that's a bit too far. It's actually giving it real strength. Oh, okay, so that's as far as that goes, and then that's going behind the case anyway, so we're not too worried. So we're basically it's going to do that, but on the other side, and then that's going to poke back through. I suppose actually, yeah, if you'd have done that the right way around, that would have gone over the top of that. Yeah. Really go straight in. Never known that go in first time. All good crumbs, that is tight. Cool, right. That's that sorted, so then we just need to shove in the RAM. And we're nearly there, and we'll give it a test fire, and as long as it fires and comes up, we can sing happy days. And then it's on to the installing, which is basically just from a USB stick. Oh, look at this, look, beautiful. Right, same with a lot of the other stuff in here. Basically, there's a set of pins on it. You'll see on the board there's a set of pins. There's realistically only one way they can go. What I suggest doing, if you are buying stuff like this, is going to be in pairs. Now, don't ask me why. Some boards, they'll go like slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, slot 4. They'll sort of like jump and alternate. So just make sure, and if you're buying in pairs, make sure that it goes in 1, 2, and then the other goes in 3, 4. Sometimes some places sort of like they mix it up a bit, so just read, it says on the motherboard, so just read what it says. Flip clips back. Okay, that side's solid. Slot it in. And we should hear the click and a click, and then that's stuck. So we'll do 1, 2. Yeah, that slots back. Second, I didn't think I'd done that. That's it. 2. I've got like so much like rubbish now on the desk. It's going to take me like a week to clean all this like that. Again, you know, just as I seem to be saying quite a lot, just make sure that you're not touching the pins where possible. You don't really want to get grubby fingers all over it. If you can help it. Boom. That's it. So the only other bit left to do in one small second is to install that 2 TB hard drive in the background. These fans that we've got here, let's plug those in actually. I kind of want it to be clean because obviously this is like a clean build. Crumbs is one of those. I'm just going to cheat slightly here, boys and girls. Just on a note of cooling, I'll just flick this down sideways. At the moment, this is where I'm tight on fans, which I kind of do need to get some more. At the moment, basically what's happening is that air's coming in the bottom of the case here, and then it's floating past what is now the graphics card and the CPU, and then the top one is drawing it out the top, so we're basically just running a straight out and up. It works for me because obviously it's sat on a desk, so you've got this much space underneath the case anyway to draw the air through, so it's not an issue for us. This one at the top here is also acting as an exhaust fan, so it's kind of going up, and then as it hits the top it's going out because obviously heat rises. We'll run it, we'll monitor it, see how we get on, but I think I might have to end up moving one of those potentially to the bottom. Or flicking it so that it's drawing air in from the bottom. Because I'm not using these SSD slots here, I think what I might land up doing is actually just putting like 2 or 3 fans at the bottom here and drawing the whole lot up. So if I've got 2 fans there, when we get the water cooling unit, we put that on the top, and then push the air up and out the back as well. Should be golden. As I say, for now, I'll slot that through there. Now we need to tidy up, that one can go back. So bear with me for one short second while I pull that through. And then we're going to have to find somewhere else. I think we're going to have to come down here somewhere. So another fan. Heatsink. Really, there's two right there. That is the most stupid point. They put two like right in the middle of the board. That is ridiculous. Take back everything I said about the corner. No, just. I'm gonna have to be slightly coy in reaching that one then, because that cable's not gonna go that far. Okay. Get away with that. Just push that in there. And hit that fan there. And with these ones, because they're not RGB, it's not really mattering all too much. There's kind of one way that they go on, as I say. That one can go on to that fan at the bottom. That's it. And the only thing we've got to do is plug in that USB. It's becoming a right snatch back here. Again for the USB. If you have a look on the USB ones, there's only one way. Again, there's only one way. You put a slot in. There's one pin that's always missing, and you've got to find that pin and just slot that one on. Right, so that one's attached. That one's attached. We need to attach our power. Just can I go this way? Everything should still be pretty much solid in here. Yeah, it is. There we go. Let's go test. So we need to plug that one into the motherboard itself, and hope that we've got enough power to actually power it, for one. As you can see, there's not a lot of options here. Normally you'd have another cable coming off here, which would potentially run some fans. You'd have another one that would go down and run your GPU. Yeah, that's one of these sides basically has like a little clip. You should probably see that. Make sure you get the right one. Because if you don't, you ain't gonna boot nothing. He says. There we go. Magical. And just while we're at it, I'm just gonna slot the hard drive onto there, so that it's out of the way. And these come with some slightly, I don't know if you can see those, slightly bigger head, and then a little screw on the side. These are great, these are. Magic. Screw that one in nice. Fairly tight, you don't want to be too tight because obviously you've got the rubber bits there. It's not really going to go anywhere. I mean, a lot of stuff, yeah, you do have to be tight with a lot of stuff. Some of the bits you can kind of get away with a bit more, as long as you can do. But I've got my sweaty paw, grubby paw prints all over it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find, luckily actually this thing comes with quite a few hard drive things. So we're going to find hard drive power. Just going to slot. Oh, don't tell me it's going in the other way around. It is going in the other way around. Oh no. Wow. I've been done right dirty there, haven't I? The power wants to go in like that angle. I have a feeling that's probably why I didn't do that in the first place. too tight to go in there. Oh, you bugger. Right, scratch that then, boys. Tell you what I might do. I'm going to have to be slightly cheeky. Let's see. If there's a way we can just move it down ever so slightly. This build is taking a lot longer than I thought it would as well, which is slightly annoying. What I'm going to do, so I can't have it there. If we put that there, no, still won't have it. Still won't have it, right, okay. Hopefully when we get the new power supply then, that'll actually fit. In the meantime, let's just touch it back in where it was. Somewhere over here is the little screw I need. Ooh. Don't you dare! Boosh! There's two on there. Right, so as I say, just for the purpose of now, I'm just going to plug this one in here, because obviously we've been done dirty by power supply for it. And I'm just going to leave it, because obviously I'm not moving it around too much in the meantime. I'm just going to leave that like that. It's not the best. Probably would not recommend under a normal set of circumstances. But we'll do what we need it to do. And we're just going to, just for now, I'm just going to run one of the data cables I know is working. From there. And push it. Move those two out of the way. And you won't see this bit, but what I'm doing is I'm just going to run it through the cable side each side and into one of the slots. So there's another one in here somewhere, which is for the front panel. Oh, where have you gone? Oh, that's controversial. There it is also. That's the HD audio one, we don't need that. Don't mind me just fumbling around with 5 or 6 different cables. Where's that even going? Right, okay. Judging by how tight that is, I'm going to move that one out, put it to there. Gonna be a good little boy and go in that gap? No, it's not. I'm being done right dirty by some of these cables, I tell you. I wouldn't go in there either. Oh no, because that's the USB-C one. Gotcha! Fair enough, okay, we can't plug that one in anyway. And the HD audio one that we've got up front, we don't need to worry about that for now. That hard drive's fine. Put that in the back there. Cool, right, so I need that power on the top. There he is. Sweet! Oh, I even need to plug in the RGB header as well. I'm beginning to wish I hadn't put that back in yet. Let's see if... No, I'm not confident at all. Oh great, that's gone onto that board. That's it. No, I'm pretty sure it lands over there. It just doesn't seem to fit on my green. Maybe because I'm stretching the cable too much. Okay, well. Should we give it a go? So let's just clear this lot out of the way ever so slightly. I'm going to put the back panel on. I'm going to be brave. Basically, what we want to do is we want to be able to get it to boot up and show us the BIOS. Shows us the BIOS screen, happy days, done everything as we should do, and then we're ready to work it. Just need a cable. Like that. You have to excuse the mess on this. Beautiful. That one we're going to plug into the card. We're going to plug in the power. Not sure how much of these you can actually see with what's going in below. Oh look, you see the lights coming on already. Oh, and we've got lights on the board as well. Happy days. I'm going to plug in the internet just for now. That one can disappear if you need that anymore. Plug in mouse, keyboard, and yeah, I'll put the other one in there as well. That's kind of what we need. And I can go on just as well as it's dropped down the back. Sweet. So, as you can see there, we are up and we are running. So, if I make sure that these are plugged in, which they're not. We'll just see how. Right, let's flick the screen on. And hopefully, this is the moment of truth. Push the power button. It's going to run. Beautiful, boys. And on the screen, oops, scanning for signal, which is not great. So there we are, running away. All the parts, all that RGB goodness, as you can see along the front as well. And then, look on the screen, should go into a BIOS. Beautiful, boys. 32, I don't know quite how much of this you can read. It's basically saying we've got the BF450 gaming BIOS, we've got the AMD Ryzen, and we've got 32 gig of Ramses installed. 6 keyboards apparently, and 3 mice. Don't quite know how you work that out. Multitasking like a boss. And at the moment, it's actually only showing as having the 2 terabyte drive here, which is actually detected. Please enter the setup. So we're going to press F1 to carry on. Beautiful, look at that. That's exactly what we want to see. So we've got deluxe RGB-ness. Look at it. Back, and we get rid of the other one. And there we have it, boys. One working PC. What I will do is actually I'll just put the front and back on for you, so you can get the full effect. And that. Trying to get my grubby fingers all over it. I'm just going to leave it lightly on. We might have to go back in there in a second. Where's the camera? Oops. And there we go. One working build. Right, there we go, boys and girls. That's it. I'm actually quite happy with how easy that went. It kind of overwent by quite a lot. I was kind of expecting it to only be an hour. But to be fair, this is the first one I've done for probably about 2-3 years. Actually building from scratch. A lot of the rest of the time has always been like, here's a bit of a PC, just knock the rest together. I'm happy with that, chuffed with that. As I say, there's probably a couple of other little bits that I just need to sort out soon. Obviously, you need to get the Windows 10 installed, hook up the rest of the cables, hook up the rest of everything else that's working, and get the whole lot sorted. But yeah, chuffed with that. Everything seems to be working fine. Putting through all the details that I expect to see. Now it's tinker time. So tinkering away with everything else that's left on board. So I hope you've enjoyed this build. You'll see us on here again soon. If you have any questions, obviously, feel free to hit us up on the Twitter. We've got an Instagram page now, R Gaming. Follow us, follow me, follow the lads. You've got myself. that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed the build, and away we run. Cheers for watching.